Hello, fellow Movie Crusaders, and welcome to our latest episode. This is our special fantasy cast episode of the Fantastic Four and the X-Men in the MCU. My name's Sean Waskrug. With me, as always, is Brian Michaels. For anyone who knows what this show is about, we did this 2 months ago, right before the Batman came out. Brian and I hopped on and we did our predictions of who was going to play Batman's villains, Robin, Batwoman, Batgirl, whatever you want to call them. And we love doing this. We do this all the time off air. We'll be watching, especially during the Weekend Crusaders, we'd watch like a stinker film. And we're like, who should have played this role? This person. Yeah. And, we would do stuff like that. So we thought with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness coming out this week, why not predict or give our casting director choices for who we want to play the new X-Men and the new Fantastic Four.
Yeah, I know the X-Men are coming because eventually, obviously, and they're actually teased Patrick Stewart, Professor X, being in this one, so it's kind of natural to kind of look towards the next phase of it. I will say one thing: I at least on my end, I never considered my predictions at all. Most of mine aren't going to happen. A lot of them have no chance of happening. This is just who I would want to have in the role.
I'm battling a cold, so my brain's kind of all over the place. So when I say predictions, I just mean who we would cast in it, not who I think that Feige's gonna hire.
Yeah, especially like after our Batman one, and then after we saw the movie, like, most of these wouldn't really fit.
Well, especially since we both lost on the Joker. Yeah, and our picks were way fucking better.
Yeah,
we were way better than what they picked for their Joker. But yeah, that's basically kind of the show. I said this on last week's episode. This was hard. This was very, very hard. I think this was bigger than Brian and I had anticipated. Because of the list. We picked a lot of characters, more characters than we probably would get, but it was also just incredibly hard narrowing down the people for this role.
I did work on this hard because obviously they're not going to include all of the X-Men right from the very beginning. They have there are hundreds of X-Men characters, but even just the core group has got so many different variations that they're probably going to eventually bring in. And then, like I kind of hinted at in a previous show, that one of the big problems is that most of these people in the world are already in the MCU. So it's like, who's left and where can we slot them in?
Yeah, and I'm not. I mean, there's some characters here where I kind of went with age, and then there were others where I don't care about the age.
That was a big part of it too.
I want this person to be here. Just like there's certain ones where it's like, oh well, the nationality of this character would be this, so you should pick something. No, I just picked who the hell I just fucking wanted to play that role. So I'm sorry that my Doctor Doom is American and not, is it Latvia? Latvia is where it's from. So I'm sorry I didn't pick a Latvian for Doctor Doom. My picks, you can make your own damn picks and all that kind of fun stuff. But we're gonna start off with the Fantastic Four. I think for me, let's go ahead and start with the Thing. I mean, I think you and I were in discussion. It's gonna be probably more or less a CGI character, kind of like the Hulk. But who did you have for your Thing? That sounds so wrong. For the Thing.
That was a difficult one because I honestly think it's going to be mostly CG, if not completely CG, except we don't know how much time he'll spend in human form. So I wanted to pick somebody who could fit in human form, but I think would also be, he's got to be a friend with Reed Richards, that kind of thing. I ended up going with O'Shea Jackson Jr., honestly. He's a little bit bigger guy. He's got a little bit of a gruff voice, but the Thing was also very jokey. And we've seen him in things like Long Shot and stuff like that. He can be a funny guy. So I just thought he'd be a good fit for him.
Did you have any other options, or was he just your go-to
person? I also considered Pablo Schreiber as a Thing. I considered Toby Kettle as a Thing just because he's got so much experience with, mocap and voiceovers and stuff. That was about the extent of what I put for him.
Yeah, for my The Thing, I was kind of trying to figure out, should I pick someone who's kind of lovable, funny guy? I had Jack Black at one point. I had Tyler Labine at one point, but I'm like, you know what? No, this guy is basically a rock monster. But so I want someone, like you said, who was, I wanted someone who's already built. So that way, when it's like, oh, he got transported, well, he is built like rock. So he turned into a rock monster. So I wanted someone who's in really, really great shape. Plus, I wanted someone who's always a fantastic supporting character, which the Thing is. But I wanted him to be exactly. But I also wanted him to be elevated because it is the MCU. So I went with Terry Crews. You know, he's funny.
I can see it.
He's built like a brick house. So him turning into a rock is great. And his voice, he's got a great voice. So I actually liked him as my the Thing.
You know, honestly, especially since we don't know the tone that they're going to go with in their Fantastic Four, he's somebody who has done like serious action roles and like Expendables kind of things, and he's done more funny stuff, so he can do either way. Yeah,
I would say my Fantastic Four are definitely more like they can play comedy or serious based off of them. Who was your Human Torch?
My Human Torch, Johnny Storm. I actually went with Anthony Ramos. From In the Heights, from Godzilla vs. Kong, from a bunch of other stuff, mainly In the Heights, though. I just think he's got the right age. He's got the right personality for it. He can be kind of a fiery temper kind of guy. I can see him doing that. But again, he will fit in the universe if they decide to go for more of a fun tone. I think he's got a lot of fun to him. And I also know that with these the MCU, they're trying to get more diversity and stuff like that. So we don't need to worry about explaining, nationalities don't match, just like in the last Fantastic Four, as bad as it was, he was adopted. So there, end of story. No, she was adopted. So there you go.
Yeah, Anthony Ramos was one of my picks. He was one of my picks for Human Torch. I also had Taron Egerton as a choice, but I was like, Egerton's a lead actor. He probably's not going to do Human Torch because even Chris Evans, he wasn't a lead actor at the time. Michael Jordan was kind of just starting out. So I picked someone who's on the cusp of he's done lead roles, but he's still not considered like an A-list actor, but I love him. And that is Dylan O'Brien. Dylan O'Brien is funny. He can do serious. And I can see him as kind of almost Chris Evans-esque in terms of being a Human Torch type of character.
He always has that same smirk, too.
Yes, he's got that smirky kind of like you want to hit him, but you also just kind of like love the guy because he's just funny. For anyone who's ever watched him in Teen Wolf, as Styles, there you go. So he was my Human Torch. I'm going to go ahead and just knock these two out together because they're my dream cast, and I think they're my dream cast for almost everybody, which is for my Mr. Fantastic and Sue Storm. I obviously want John Krasinski and Emily Blunt. I think they would be the perfect casting choice for these. I know Emily Blunt, she back out of being Black Widow?
She was unable to do Black Widow because she had to do Glover's Travels of all things.
Yeah, so she always regretted that. And so I could see her coming in as a Sue Storm, and of course, he was like, well, hey, John, you're in shape now. You look great. You can totally play Mr. Fantastic. So I had a backup, Sue Storm and Mr. Fantastic, but I'm going to lock myself in. I want Krasinski and Emily Blunt. I mean, you go online and you type in Krasinski, Blunt, Fantastic Four. There are people who have fan photos of them already, like in the gear and stuff, and they just look right. Plus, I can buy Emily Blunt and Dylan O'Brien as siblings. He's the annoying little brother to her. And I think that their chemistry would work really well. I think Krasinski would work well. And Terry Crews works with everybody. So that would be my Fantastic Four. Who is your Sue Storm and Mr. Fantastic?
Well, I honestly had two groups because I had John Krasinski and Emily Blunt because that's the one everybody has out there. And of course, with Mr. Fantastic being in the comics, a part of the Illuminati, people are thinking, oh, he could show up in Doctor Strange. Would it be John Krasinski? And if John Krasinski was in there, would he be the same Mr. Fantastic that we'd see in the Fantastic Four? We don't know because it's the multiverse thing. So there's all kinds of questions going on there. But if they could get John Krasinski and Emily Blunt, I'd be all for it. I honestly kind of think that they're going to go younger because, see, I'm torn on that because, they want him to do lots of films in the future. But at the same time, Reed Richards was always known as, if he's in the Illuminati, well, yeah, again, maybe not the same version of him, though. But it's like he's kind of an older guy. So they would be perfect for it. But I did come up with a backup group. My backup, Reed Richards, was Sam Claflin, who I don't know if anybody knows who he is. He's in one of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. He was in Hunger Games. He's been in Enola Holmes, a few other things. He just has the right look to him, the right personality. Again, he can be serious. He can be funny. He is kind of lanky in some of his roles, but he's still, pretty fit. So I think he'd fit that. And to go with him as Sue Storm, I have Lily James, who... she's an actress who, we just love around here. And I just think of all the people that we were casting, I thought she fit best with Sue Storm.
Yeah, plus she's coming.
And I can see her with him, too. So.
She's coming off hot right now with Pam and Tommy. So I mean, she's got the eyes on her right now. I've always liked Lily James as well. Which brings us to, if you got to have the Fantastic Four, you got to have Doctor Doom. I mean, we were literally discussing this. I think it was last night. Where it's like, well, what other villains could we have? Like, do we have to do Doctor Doom? It's like, you can't have the Fantastic. It's like you can't have Batman without Joker. You can't have the Fantastic Four without Doctor Doom. That's the only villain we picked for the Fantastic Four because, yeah, it's Doctor Doom.
There's not much else. I mean, obviously they battled a lot of other people in the comics, but most people aren't familiar with them, and I have to think they'd start off with Doctor Doom, at least as a background character, if not the main antagonist.
Yeah, because that's the thing though, is that they all 5 get infected at the same time. So you can't have the Fantastic Four get turned into the Fantastic Four without Doctor Doom also getting turned. So it's kind of hard to not have him as a part of that group. So for me, I was kind of stuck between 3 names, and I'm going to say this right now. My hardest picks were Doctor Doom, Professor X, Magneto, Rogue, and Jean Grey. And Doctor Doom, I just kept flip-flopping because, one, I was trying to pick someone who was at least European or had, a kind of an accent to him because of Doctor Doom's lineage. But ultimately, when it came down to it, I realized this guy's mostly going to have a mask on because Doctor Doom usually wears a mask. And I want someone who's got that voice, who can, he's, basically almost like a snake. He can talk and just trick you and make you think he weaves you into doing exactly what he wants to do. So basically like a con man. I had Luke Evans at one point, but I went away from that. I also had Christoph Waltz, but I thought that would have been too old for Krasinski and Blunt. So I went with this actor. I love him on the TV show that I'm about ready to bring him into. I've only seen him in one movie, which he was in last year's Candyman. I'm talking about Coleman Domingo from Fear the Walking Dead. This dude basically plays a con man on Fear the Walking Dead. He is a character that you love and hate. I don't know how many times in Fear the Walking Dead he has flipped back and forth between good guy, bad guy, good guy, bad guy. And no matter what, every time he does that, you kind of are always in an agreement with him. He's got that aesthetic, that kind of voice that makes you go, well, he's got a fucking point. And Doctor Doom is that kind of villain where he does things. It's like, well, yeah, he's a bad guy, but I can see kind of where he's coming from, which that's always been the best MCU villains, are the ones that are bad, but they got a point. And I think Coleman Domingo would be the perfect choice for a Doctor Doom. Who is your Doctor Doom?
Well, I honestly picked 2 Doctor Dooms based on who my Reed Richards ends up being, because I had the 2 picks for that. Okay. Because they have to be like friends and colleagues and stuff, so I had to have the ages kind of match up there. With the younger, the older one, if John Krasinski was cast, I was between 2 people. I at one point considered Pedro Pascal. I thought he'd be interesting. But the 2 I kept going between were Michael Shannon and Nikolai Coster-Waldau from Game of Thrones.
I had him on a few options. I think I actually had him and I took him off.
Yeah, and so I think when it came down to it, I ended up saying Michael Shannon for this role, but that's only because I had saved Nikolai for something else later. Because Michael Shannon, he can be kind of the maniacal villain. Obviously, he's good at that. But he can also be the kind of guy who's like, you understand why he's doing what he did. The case in point being Man of Steel. Like in the beginning of that movie, he's not just like mustache twirling villain. He's like, this is what we need to do to save our world. He has a point, even if it's not the same point that Jor-El has. So I kind of liked him in for that role. If they went the younger version with Sam Claflin, I had to have somebody close to his age. I actually went with Jonathan Rhys Meyers. He's a guy who hasn't had a lot of big roles. Mission Impossible 3. He was in August Rush. He's not in a whole lot of stuff so much anymore. But he has a certain look to him. He's I believe Irish or maybe English. So he's kind of got that European kind of sensibility to him. He's got that face that he can be kind of come across as a hero or as a villain. And I just thought he'd be kind of menacing. That might be a good way to go.
Yeah, I can't. I was really trying to think. Like, when was the last time I saw Jonathan Rhys Meyers in something? It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, so I mean that's a solid choice. So now we got the X-Men pretty much completed, or we got the Fantastic Four completed. So now let's go to the X-Men. Yes, I mean you got your main group. which we don't know how they're going to go about this in the MCU. Obviously, we know what we did with Sony's X-Men. So, I mean, we basically recast most of those same people. But let's look at kind of, I don't want to call them the B team, but let's kind of go with like the lesser knowns.
The supporting cast more, yeah.
Yeah, they're definitely more the supporting. They're not any less than or weaker than the main group, but they're definitely, like, when you think of X-Men, they're not the ones you think of right away. Let's go with I mean, he only showed up in one X-Men film at the time. That is Angel, played by Ben Foster in Last Stand. We're playing. Oh no, he was also in Apocalypse as well. I forgot the actor who played him in Apocalypse though. But let's go ahead and go with him. Who did you have as your Angel?
I considered a few people. I ended up settling on Alex Pettyfer, who was in Magic Mike. He was in I Am Number 4. A few other movies. But he's got kind of the pretty boy look that Angel has always had. He can come across as kind of the snobby millionaire, which Warren Worthington III always was. In this version, obviously he's a little older than in the previous version of X-Men, where they had him basically as just somebody's son or kind of a teenager kind of thing, because that's not what he was in the comics. So I'm kind of banking on them going with the older version of Angel, and so that's who I went with, Alex Pettyfer.
Yeah, I kind of was trying to go off of a little bit like Ben Foster situation where he was the son of somebody, so he kind of has that snarkiness to him, kind of like he's above it all, but he's still obviously a good guy. But Angel does teeter sometimes. But I had Luke Grimes at one point. Maybe we'll know him from Yellowstone. But ultimately, I picked somebody that you had picked on the Batman show, which I'm gonna say his first name wrong because I don't know necessarily how to say it, and that's Decree Montgomery. Dacre Montgomery.
Maybe he was actually the second person. He was my second choice. He was my
I mean, people know him from Stranger Things. Also, he's the Red Ranger from the Power Rangers remake a couple years back. I think, and what's funny is, like, I don't want my Angel to have a mullet or anything like that. But when I think of Angel, my brain immediately goes to him in Stranger Things when he's like in the lifeguard thing, and all the moms are watching him, like, drooling. And I'm just like, I can see him with Angel's wings and just kind of being this badass.
That's why I came up with Alex Pettyfer, because I was from Magic Mike. He's got the fit body and stuff. You can see him bare chested with the wings. And
yeah, so that was my Angel. Let's go to, I think, how did you describe him the other night? Iceman. How did you describe Iceman the other night?
I just described him as bland and boring, and pretty much anyone in the world could play him. I don't remember my exact wording, but somewhere along the lines of he's just kind of bland and
you don't really care for him. So that's what we're gonna go to next is Iceman. For me, I had Dylan O'Brien down at one point because I was also thinking Anthony Ramos for Human Torch, and had I gone with my backup, Sue Storm, then I would have had Ramos as my Torch, and I would have put Dylan O'Brien as Iceman. But because I stayed with the Krasinski blunt narrative, I basically had to put Dylan O'Brien at Human Torch. So I wanted to pick someone also who is, I don't want someone to be basically like Shawn Ashmore, because it was Shawn Ashmore. He's got a twin. Was it Shawn Ashmore that played Iceman in the movies? Yeah. So I wanted someone who could be snarky, could be funny, could be kind of more livelier than the bland, nothing Iceman that you described. Obviously, he's not going to have that relationship with Rogue because our Rogue's supposed to be with Gambit. So I just want him to kind of be a cool ice dude who does things. And when I thought of this character, I was like, I can totally see this actor playing him. And that is Joe Kiri from Stranger Things and Free Guy. Mainly Free Guy is that mixture of Steve and his performance in Free Guy basically kind of gave me that perfect gel that I could see him, because he's lanky, so he's not going to be like this buff superhero. But as Iceman, you don't need to be super strong and stuff because you're shooting ice out of your fingers. So let's have a guy who's really good at talking and who could be a comic relief at certain points. And Joe was, to me, was that guy. Who was yours?
I kind of went this is a little bit the same route because I thought, instead of being somebody who's kind of blame, and I honestly don't blame Sean Ashmore for that. I blame more the writing.
No,
They didn't give him character much to do in the
they
previous
basically
version.
made him the teenage, romance part of the role, which.
But Iceman, I thought is supposed to be. I think he is when they show him in the comics. Like he is kind of physically fit. I mean, he doesn't be like super buff, but he has to be fit. But I also wanted to get somebody who was kind of cool, somebody who could be fun, because he seemed like he would be a little bit of the younger kind of funny guy. And I actually went with Mason Gooding, who you might know from Booksmart. He was in the newest Scream.
Oh, he was one of the twins, right?
Yes.
Okay, I know you're talking about.
So he hasn't done a whole lot, but it's something about him when I just saw his face and stuff. I'm like, you know what? I can totally see him playing that, and I could see them turning that into Ice. So.
Gotcha. Next, we're gonna go with a character who we think there's honestly a few characters like, can we just bring back the original performer for this role? And this was one of them where we're like, could we? And we're like, no, we got to recast her, and that's Psylocke, previously played by Olivia Munn. Now there's two different versions of Psylocke. I chose the assassin version of it. Now granted, I had backup options for the other Psylocke, but I went with the assassin one because that's the most
for anyone not familiar. Psylocke in the comics was a British woman, and then I won't get into storylines, but at some point she basically transferred her consciousness into this Asian assassin body, and she basically became a whole different character. So it's basically two Psylocks. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. So I had backups for that. Like I had Alicia Vikander at one point. I had Ana de Armas at one point. But ultimately I was like, you know what? Psylocke is not going to be a top tier part in these films. So Vikander and Ana de Armas, they're not going to do a littler role like that because they're growing and they're elevating their status. They're going to want a big role. So I want someone who everything I've seen her in, she's awesome. And I feel like a lot of people know her from this role, but they don't know her name. And I'm probably going to say the name wrong. So Brian, help me out with this. But I picked from The Boys, Karen Fukara. And she's also on Bullet Train, I believe. That's coming out in next.
I think she might be. She's
the one on the poster, I think.
Yeah.
She's awesome in The Boys. She definitely knows, the fighting styles. And I think that she could be a pretty kick-ass Psylocke. So that's who I went with for my casting choice. Now, did you go with the Asian assassin or did you go with the British?
Well, I put names down for both but I think they'll almost definitely go with the Asian version simply because it's a chance to involve one more minority character instead of just more white people, and also because that's the far more popular version of the character. There's a reason they switched to that version of the character because it's far more popular. Although I think they'll play down the skimpy bikini looking outfit that Olivia Munn wore. But if they did use the British one, I had Kate Beckinsale in the role. For the Asian one, I went with somebody who's kind of an up and comer. She's made some films that haven't been great, but she's been good in them, and that is Jessica Henwick. I really liked her in The Matrix Resurrections. She was one of the few good things about that. She appeared in Star Wars in a small role. So I think she's somebody
in your world, the Netflix shows don't exist because she was in Iron Fist.
Oh, Netflix shows don't exist.
I mean, Daredevil and
they've even said that they're carrying characters over, but it's not
okay because
the stories still aren't canon.
Henwick is in Iron Fist, but okay, so if we're not going canon, then that would work perfectly. But I love Jessica Henwick. She's the best part of Iron Fist. She 100% is the best part of Iron Fist. So,
I mean, later on, I have a potential person that's well, I had actually a second choice that's from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So we're just assuming that's being ignored too.
poor. Wow, blanked on Agent Coulson. It's like poor Coulson. He's like, your stuff doesn't matter. Next, we've got Nightcrawler. Nightcrawler in the movies, I don't think was ever done justice. I think Alan Cumming did a solid job as Nightcrawler. But then they did Cody Smith McPhee, and it was just like, oh, we just want Nightcrawler on camera. We don't really want to do anything with that character. And he's such a popular character in the comics and on the TV show, the cartoon show. Who did you go with your Nightcrawler?
So Nightcrawler is I agree, has been kind of underused. I think Alan Cumming did a great job, but then he didn't want to come back for any more after that, so kind of wasted there. And then with the younger group, like you said, Cody Smith McPhee. Again, he did fine. He had a few featured scenes, but he was largely a background character. But I wanted somebody who could kind of fit the character as I know him, which is, He's shy, he's awkward, he has a certain look to him too as well. And I thought, if I painted this person blue, I think he's perfect for it, and that's Riz Ahmed.
He honestly was one of my choices, but then I found mine. I was like, I'm sorry, Riz, you're out.
So yeah, it's just something about him. When I looked at him, I'm like, I can totally see him in this role. And he's not a loud, boisterous guy. He often is a very kind of shy, awkward guy in all the roles he plays. And I could just see it working.
See, I went kind of a different route with my Nightcrawler. I wanted someone who was fun and kind of almost like a rock star in a way, but not like a heavy metal rock star. Kind of like almost like Jack Sparrow, kind of just like.
Well, it's funny you say that, because there were times in the comics where he was like seen as like this swashbuckling guy with like a pirate sword and stuff.
Yeah, and I want someone that was like a Jack Sparrow, kind of like, flamboyant, but can just be just someone that you just cannot take your eyes off of. And then he does his Nightcrawler thing. You're like, oh crap! But when he got on screen, you're like, yes. And that to me is probably the most popular character from this TV show on Netflix, and that's from Umbrella Academy, Robert Sheehan. This dude,
I saw his name come up a couple places. Yeah,
Robert Sheehan. I was looking through people and I was like, all right, who could be Nightcrawler? And as soon as he popped up, I was like, yes, 100%. Like I stopped looking after that point. He has, if anyone who's ever watched Umbrella Academy, his character, he's the entertainment of that show. Like that show, it's a solid show. But the cast around them are relatively dry because they're serious. And he's the life of the party. He's the comic relief. He comes in and just kind of makes a mess of everything. And he is, like I said, he is that Jack Sparrow. If they ever wanted to remake Pirates of the Caribbean, because Johnny Depp says he's not going to come back, I could see him be Jack Sparrow. And I want him for my Nightcrawler, because I think he'd be awesome as Nightcrawler. Next, we'll stick with the blue people. We're going to stay on this blue train. We're going to stay on this blue train. We're going to go with a role that was a kind of a side character in the original trilogy, but then became one of the most important characters.
And should have stayed a side character.
Stop hating on Jennifer Lawrence's Mystique. But we are going with Mystique. Like I said, this is a character that was relatively a side character with Rebecca mainstay most of the original trilogy, but then they really kind of forced her to the front with Jennifer Lawrence because it was Jennifer Lawrence. I know you're going to love my pick so much that I'm going to go last on this one. This is the one pick that I was like, I'll tell Brian any of my picks if he asks. This is the one I'm not going to tell him. So who do you have as Mystique?
So Mystique obviously is supposed to be a pretty sexy character. Here's her butt right over my shoulder here. She's supposed to be a sexy character. She's supposed to be attractive. She's supposed to be she's manipulative, obviously, in what she does. But primarily, she's supposed to be a villain, and she should always be a villain. There were a couple isolated times when she teamed up with the X-Men for something, but those were the exceptions to the rule, as opposed to what the Jennifer Lawrence versions would have you think. And so I wanted somebody who kind of has that kind of evil streak to her, who has even played a bad guy in a few things. And I went with Natalie Dormer. Natalie Dormer, who, of course, she's in Hunger Games, she was in Game of Thrones. I just think that she's definitely got that sexy look to her. She definitely has that kind of sly. She's like, we're talking about Dylan. She always kind of has that smirk on her face. She's very manipulative. She can be very seductive.
And so I just think she'd be perfect back at the same time.
Yeah. I did consider, there were so many people I considered for this, just because obviously I was trying to find places to slot in, Ana de Armas and Isa Gonzalez, but I ended up going, I think she's the better fit.
I had two other choices for this. I had Samara Weaving. I think she would have been a solid one. I had Naomi Scott as an option, but ultimately when it came down to it, I also had Natalie Dormer.
Hey, there you go.
I picked her, and I was like, Brian is going to love this pick.
You're right.
I picked her, and I'm like, that makes so much sense. That we thought the exact thing. You want someone sexy. You want someone that literally, like I just said to you, could be smiling at you while stabbing you in the back, and still you get stabbed. You're like, it's okay. You're pretty, kind of thing. She was a highlight of Game of Thrones, completely underutilized character. And I haven't seen her in a while. She needs something to put her back out there. in front of everybody. And granted, she's going to be blue in it, but she could be any color. She's gorgeous regardless. So we have our first same pick. Of course, it had to be
unless you count Krasinski and blonde, but that's everybody in the world.
Yeah, but you didn't pick them. You didn't pick them though.
I picked. They were like my A team and my B team.
All right. So staying on the blue train, we're gonna go with everyone's favorite, Beast. We had Kelsey Grammer play him. We had Nicholas Hoult play him. I went with someone who obviously he's got to be intelligent because he's a scientist. I didn't want to go the Kelsey Grammer route because I honestly didn't really care for Kelsey. He looked good, but I didn't like the voice for him. But I also didn't want someone who was kind of like the lovesick puppy that Nicholas Hoult kind of was in the original. Or the
Kelsey was definitely closer to the original.
Yeah, Grammer was more close. So I wanted someone who was kind of a nice mix between it, more towards the scientifically brilliant guy, but someone also who talks very well, but also someone that anytime I see him show up. Now, he's more of a TV actor. I don't really think I've seen him in many movies, but every time he pops up on a TV show, I'm like, yes, I love this guy. And that is, excuse me, that is, I'm probably going to say his last name incorrectly, Raul Cooley. Many people will know him from iZombie, where he plays the morgue guy. He was also in Haunting of Blind Manor. He was in, I want to say he was in Midnight Mass. I think he was in Midnight Mass as well. But this dude is so awesome, and I love this guy. I also had Dev Patel as a second choice because I thought Dev Patel would have been a good secondary beast as well. But I love this guy, and I want him to, once again, just like Natalie Dormer, be elevated to top tier status as an actor because he's got charisma. He's got that kind of like, this dude is so like, because he's got that kind of British accent with it. He's so sexy that girls will fall for him, but then you're putting him in a blue Beast outfit and he will make Beast sexy. And I think he'd be the perfect Beast. Actually, I also had him as a backup for Cyclops too, but I went with Beast.
I had a couple ideas for this. My choice for a long time was actually because I wanted somebody who could be physical, obviously, and kind of strong, but also the kind of intelligent, the scientist and all that. And which is why for the longest time I had Josh Lawson in this spot. Josh Lawson is the guy who just recently played Kano in Mortal Kombat, so he can do.
Guy.
Well, he's a funny guy. I've seen him.
You picked him for Bane.
Well, Bane I couldn't figure out anybody up for. I was way off on Bane, but I could see him doing. He could do the physical stuff here, obviously, but he can be kind of fun. But also, if you've ever seen him on like House of Lies and some of these other things he's done, he plays like the intelligent kind of nerdy guy. So I could do both sides of it. But I did not use him because I decided, you know what? Hopefully, he's going to stay in blue form and not just be turning human randomly, like in the recent. And so I thought, you know what? Who better to be somebody who, in my opinion, they probably will just go CG with it anyway, than Toby Kettle. Toby Kettle, who obviously kind of inherited or worked with Andy Serkis, and now as Andy does more directing, like Toby Kettle seems to be the go-to guy for mocap, not only in his physical performance where he can be a beast, but also in his voice, in his eyes, and his mannerisms. I think that he'd be the perfect person to do that kind of a role.
I don't hate Toby Kettle for any role. I think Toby Kettle. It's I think we talked about him in, I can't remember what we talked about him in. I think it was in the Batman one because I picked him for Zaz, where I was like, he's such a great actor, but he just makes the wrong choices for live action. But when he's behind CG, he's one of the best ones out there. So I'm cool with Toby Kettle being picked for anything. Next, we're gonna go with the person who likes to light frogs on fire with lightning bolts. Storm. Storm, obviously we had Halle Berry, who also was underutilized in the original trilogy. And then we had another, I think part 2 of our, can we just recast her as Storm, which with Alexandra Shipp. I think you and I both were like, can we just have her stay as Storm?
I liked her as Storm.
Her as Storm, but she, once again, underutilized. Storm's always underutilized. So I had Alexandra Shipp at one point, but I was like, no, pick somebody who hasn't done it. And I was between two. I was between Kiki Palmer and then my inevitable choice, which I talked about her was it last year? Or was it 2020? I saw her in a Netflix film, and I believe I told you, Brian. I was like, Charlize Theron was good, but this person stood out, and I can't wait to see what she does next, and that is Kiki Lane. I think Kiki Lane would be a great Storm. We obviously know she can fight because we saw her in the Old Guard. And I think she would be a very, very solid character. And I think Keke Palmer, while she would be a great choice, I think she doesn't want to get locked down into a superhero franchise. So I think Kiki Lane would actually be a solid choice for that. Who was your Storm?
Kiki Lane was my actual second choice. She was my runner-up. I had her because I agree she was great in Old Guard, and I think she has the look to her, and she could really pull it off. I ended up thinking because Storm has always been like a leader of the group. Like even when Cyclops was around half the time, she was the leader, and her and Cyclops basically the two people who ran the place. So I thought I wanted somebody maybe a little bit older, has a little bit more wisdom to her, and so I ended up going with Sonequa Martin Green, who originally from Walking Dead. Now she's on one of those Star Trek shows. I've lost
Star Trek Discovery. She was one of my choices, but I took her off.
Yeah, so she ended up being my top choice with Kiki Lane a close second.
Gotcha. I don't hate that. Like I said, I loved her on The Walking Dead. I have not watched Star Trek Discovery, so I really can't say much for that. Next, we're going to go with somebody who was underutilized in the original trilogy, even though she was acted by a very likable person, but her character was literally miscast the whole way through, and that is Rogue. Rogue was basically Jubilee in the original film because apparently they didn't want to cast Jubilee as a knockoff character, so they just made Rogue Jubilee. Rogue is supposed to be this sexy Southern badass who is says sugar and all this kind of stuff. Like she's supposed to be this fun, vibrant character, not the kind of I don't want to be a mutant character that we got from Anna Paquin in the original trilogy. This was one of my hardest picks because it was one of yours too. Because I remember you were saying it last night. Like I still don't have Rogue down yet. I had to go with somebody that's so off the reservation that I forgot that she sadly existed, and then she popped back up, and I was like, oh, I loved her in this show I watched back in the day, and then I was like, oh, but can she be Rogue? And I also had Emmy Mackey from Death of the Nile. She was my front runner for the longest time, but I ended up going with this TV actress because I think she's charismatic, and she currently has red hair right now, so I know she can do the red hair look, and she has that kind of sassy spitball kind of character, someone that the Rogue character that we know from the comics and the cartoon could be. And this girl, she was from a Disney show. She was on Victorious. Where I first knew her from, she was on Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll with Dennis Leary, and now she's on CW's Dynasty, and that is Elizabeth Gillis. I think she's gorgeous, which Rogue to me was always the most sexiest X-Men character in the cartoons and stuff. Like I said, she's funny, she's beautiful. She has that look to her that I think would actually benefit the Rogue character more than Anna Paquin did. And I think she would mesh well with who my Gambit is going to be, because Rogue and Gambit, they're a couple. They're supposed to be a couple. And when I think of her with my Gambit, I'm like, that works. Who did you end up picking for your Rogue? Because I know you had a really, really hard time with your Rogue.
Rogue was hard for me because I couldn't find anybody who fit the role physically, who had the right look to her, who could pull off the red hair, with the white skunk stripe, much less, have the Southern accent kind of thing going for her. And I had a real hard time. For a while, I considered Samara Weaving. I considered, I also forgot first name here, Hennig. Somebody's been she's been on a bunch of horror films and stuff. And then Adrian Pollicki, for the longest time, I kind of locked her in because she definitely, I think, can play the sexiness, she can play the playfulness. We've seen her in everything from John Wick to, of course, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which might take her out of the running for it. But I'm like, I could totally see her because she kind of has that smile, she kind of has that sexiness, she could work for it. But I ended up going a little bit different route with somebody who I know can do physical action, who Sean and I both really enjoy when she does physical action. We both have enjoyed her just in most things that she appears in. I don't know that she pulls off kind of the sexiness that Rogue usually has, and so I don't know how she'd look with the hair, but she definitely had the personality to make it work, and that's Mackenzie Davis. It's kind of a left field pick because, like I said, physically I'm not sure if it works. I'd have to see her in like a costume test, but personality wise and just strength of characters, I could totally see her pulling it off.
I could see her pull it off because of *Halt and Catch Fire*.
Yeah, between the combination of *Halt and Catch Fire* and *Terminator: Dark Fate*.
Yeah, her character in *Halt and Catch Fire*, I can totally see her play off Rogue. Yeah. It's the Southern accent thing that doesn't get me, but I can totally see her as a Rogue character. Going into that, we're gonna go to Gambit next because we gotta have her other half. The Cajun, Motomi, card thrower, staff fighter. Did you go the way I think you were gonna go? Because you kept telling me, and I was like, don't.
Well, I'd be okay with it. My thing is that, okay, for the longest time, Channing Tatum was supposed to be Gambit in a movie. And it kept getting delayed, and it never took off. And then, of course, when Disney bought Fox, it basically got scrapped. I think that he would actually make a very good Gambit. That being said, at this point, I don't know if they would use him. So instead, I had to pick somebody else. And I actually came down to two actors who one I end up not using, but who I think could actually work is Garrett Hedlund. The one who I end up going with is Boyd Holbrook, who was in Logan. He was in, he's been in all kinds of stuff. The Predator. That. But he definitely kind of has that personality that from Gambit. He's kind of suave. He's kind of cool. He's kind of he always thinks he's like the smartest guy in the room, but he's playful, but he's also dangerous, and he's a good fit for it.
One thing that always, whenever I think of Boyd, the first thing I get is when it's in Logan, and it's when Laura's coming at him, and he goes, "No," which starts to phrase like, "No," and I can see Gambit just be like, "Mm." So for me with my Gambit, I wanted someone, because to me when I think of Gambit, I think of this is yes, girls are gonna love Wolverine and all this stuff, but Gambit's the one he's the Aragorn. Lord of the Rings, where the girls are going to go, oh my God, he's, the sexy one. So I wanted someone who oozes charisma that also can do the French, have the Motomi kind of thing. And actually do it great. So it doesn't seem like it's not like Taylor Kitsch, where he did it for 5 minutes and then just went straight Southern after that in X-Men Origins.
Well, that's just is like when I was thinking about both Channing and Boyd, they kind of have a Southern base to them, so they can probably make it easier to transition to Cajun. But we'll see. But go ahead. Sorry.
The one pick I wanted was what's his name from Terriers and True Blood. The guy.
I don't remember the guy's name. I know who you're talking about.
He did the Cajun shit perfectly.
Yeah.
But he's too old to play Gambit. I also had Josh Holloway as an option. Josh
Holloway for decades was who I wanted for Gambit, but he's too old now.
He's the perfect Gambit, but he's too old for it now. The other one I had, I can't see the guy's name. Right, he was from Bridgerton. Is it Regis Jean Page?
I know who you're talking about. I don't know how to pronounce it either, but I know.
But I didn't go that route. I went with someone, like I said, who I enjoy. Everything I've seen him in, I've enjoyed him in. And now, since he's been the star of this TV show, I'm going a lot of TV with these people. I see this look, and I'm like, I see him as Gambit right now, and that's Daveed Diggs. I mean, we know Daveed Diggs can do French because of Hamilton. He was Lafayette in Hamilton, and he can do the to me kind of thing work. Plus, with Snowpiercer now, excuse me, with Snowpiercer, he's got the dreadlocks, he's got the look. We know he can do action now because of that show. And I think him and Elizabeth Gillis, would actually work really, really well together. Plus, we love Daveed Diggs in Blind Spotting. I want Daveed Diggs to get in to the MCU. I want his character to be around. I want Gambit to be a big role in these movies. And that was probably the one. I think I told you, I was like, there's two roles that I am in love with. One was Mystique, and the other was Gambit. That I was like, I want this to happen so badly, and I know it's not going to happen, but I so badly want Daveed Diggs as Gambit. And if it actually does happen, I'm going to be just straight up giddy over this.
Yeah, I think Gambit in this version of X-Men is going to be a major character.
I hope he is. Is. Next, we're going to go to, hands down for me, my favorite villain in the X-Men. He's only been in one movie. He was not used properly. No, he's in 2 movies. He was used incorrectly in the good version, and then he was fantastic in the shittiest X-Men movie ever made, and that is Sabretooth. I love Sabretooth.
Wait, Sabretooth wasn't in First Class.
X-Men Wolverine's Origins is the worst X-Men film of all time. Lee Schreiber was a perfect Sabretooth. If I could cast him again, I would. But I said I wasn't going to cast anyone who wasn't already in the films. Tyler Bane? Is it Tyler Bane?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was fine. Maine. He was fine, but they didn't really let him do anything except for just kind of be this towering guy. And Sabretooth is such an important character. I mean, the rivalry between Sabretooth and Wolverine is one of the biggest rivalries in the X-Men world. And I feel like X-Men Wolverine's Origins did it, but the movie was just so bad that you just didn't care. And I wanted to redo it. And so for me, I wanted someone who has that animalisticness of a character. He can play like he's an animal. I want someone who's obviously taller than Wolverine. So granted, my Wolverine's going to be shorter because he's supposed to be like 5'4" in the comics, and Hugh Jackman was over 6 foot. Nothing against Hugh Jackman, he was the best. But I want someone who's going to tower over my Wolverine. At one point, I had Travis Fimmel from Vikings. I also had Luke Evans in this role as well. But ultimately, I went with someone who I actually had at one point as my Wolverine, but I moved him to Sabretooth because of his height. And this is the guy that when I first saw him, he was a comedy character on a Netflix show that every time he got on the screen, you're just like, oh, this fucking guy. But this guy has grown, has gotten in killer fucking shape. And now he's playing one of the most iconic characters in video game history, and that is Master Chief Pablo Schreiber. Or Pablo?
Pablo.
Yeah, Pablo Schreiber. Anyone who's seen American Gods, or heck, look at him now as Master Chief. Dude got shredded. You get him.
Den of Thieves is where I first noticed him.
What's that?
Den of Thieves is the first place I really noticed him.
First place I know him. He's Porn Stash from Orange Is the New Black. He's basically this Weasley.
That's right, he is. I watched that since.
He's Porn Stash. He's the Weasley security guard guy in the prison that everyone freaking hated. But look at him now. He's not Porn Stash no more. He's freaking Master Chief. And I want him as my Sabretooth. I think he would be a fantastic Sabretooth.
And for anyone out there who doesn't know, he's Leo Schreiber's brother.
And yes, and we keep it in the family here with Sabretooth. We get the little bro. So who was your pick for Sabretooth?
I considered Travis Fimmel as well. I think he'd be very good in the role. But actually, this is one that it would never happen. But just if I was casting the dream movie in my head, who I put as Sabretooth, I think is somebody who, again, like you said, he kind of has to be animalistic and feral. He also needs to be big. He needs to be intimidating. Get a big mane of hair the way he should have, although he'd have to be blonde. And that is Jason Momoa. I think Jason Momoa, if he wasn't doing, he couldn't be doing his surfer dude Aquaman kind of personality. But if he was just doing his primal, more like his Game of Thrones character, just being intimidating and kind of a lot of growling and grunting, I think he's perfect for the role physically.
If he wasn't Aquaman, he'd be perfect for the role. You just make him a bad guy version of Conan, and just
So this is the number one pick that I have that would not actually happen, but it would be perfect casting for me.
Okay. Rolling that into, you can't have Sabretooth without Wolverine. Who was your Wolverine? Because I know you this one was another hard one for you. I remember this being a hard one for you.
Well, I went through a lot of people thinking about Wolverine because it's in the comics they say he's a short guy, but you don't want to be comically short because in live action it's going to look kind of silly if you have somebody too small for it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, do you want to go with a 6 foot Hugh Jackman? I considered for the longest time I had Luke Evans in this role because he can play. Even in things like Dracula Untold, which a lot of people didn't like that movie, but he kind of had that same kind of personality to him. He's done a movie called No One Lives, where it's a revenge thriller, where he kind of has that fierceness to him. I think physically he fits the role. I think that he's old enough to be kind of the elder guy of the group, one of the elder guys of the group, but young enough that he can play the role for many years. And after I saw The Northman, I considered even Alexander Skarsgård who is not the first name that jumps to mind because he doesn't quite look. But just if you see that movie, he kind of has during the battle scenes, kind of had those virile kind of moments.
Honestly, the opening scene of Northman, I was like, "This is Sabretooth."
Yeah. The one I ended up going with, and this will be my most controversial pick of the night. I can picture him, and I think people underestimate this actor and what he can do. And I think physically he looks right in the face, things like that. I think he can do physical, but I think he can also have fun. He's somebody else who had took over another very famous role from famous actor, that being Han Solo. I picked Alden Ehrenreich.
I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all.
I mean, if you see some other movies he's done, like Hail Caesar, some things like that, he's done some goofy comedy kind of things like that. But if you look more at, Solo even, and some of the other things he's done, I just think that he's the guy who, given the right role, can really break through. I mean, a lot of people hated on Solo for whatever reasons, but I think that he could fit the role well.
All right. So for mine, like obviously my backups were Travis Fimmel and Pablo Schreiber. For mine, I went with someone who I think desperately needs a starring role. Now, he does star in movies. He does. He's starred in many movies, but he's never had, to me, that role that makes me go, kind of like we did, like we said with Channing Tatum, where when he did 21 Jump Street, we're like, okay, I actually pay attention to Channing Tatum now. And I want this actor. I mean, just like with Channing Tatum, he was an actor that I am Leo, where I didn't like him, but then he started to do other things. I'm like, actually, you know what? I really, really like him, and now I want him to get to that upper echelon level. He's shorter.
Is Rob Schneider?
Yeah, Rob Schneider. Rob Schneider as Wolverine. He has worked with Hugh Jackman, so he has an in to get the persona of Hugh Jackman as Wolverine down. He can get in amazing shape. He's worked with The Rock, and The Rock helped him get into amazing shape, so he can look the role. The only thing that he would need to work on is the gruff in the voice. Other than that, I think this actor can pull off Wolverine, and that is Zac Efron. Zac Efron has, I mean, you saw him in Baywatch. He was freaking shredded. He went toe-to-toe with The Rock in weights. With Hugh Jackman, Greatest Showman, they can coalesce with each other, and how he goes, this is how you play Wolverine, and get Efron to that point. Efron needs, like, he tried it last year with the Ted Bundy film. It didn't quite work out for him. This is the role that I think Zac Efron should take if he gets an offer to him, and embrace the hell out of it and ride that train like Hugh Jackman did, where Hugh Jackman went from like a nobody to one of the top actors in Hollywood. And I think Efron could totally take this role by storm if given the opportunity. He just needs to his voice a little bit, which I think he can totally do. That's why I went with him, because he's like 5'8". Pablo Schreiber will tower over him as Sabretooth as well. But with Wolverine, you got to have his ultimate love, and that is Jean Grey. This one was also hands down one of the hardest ones for me. I had like 10 actresses at one point for this role, and it wasn't because I thought all of them could be it. It's because I just was throwing names against the wall because I couldn't find anyone that I really liked. I had Lily James in this role. I had Lucy Boynton in this role. And I had Evan Rachel Wood for this role. But it came down to, and you said, and I told you this, and I was like, you're like, oh crap, I didn't think of it this way, was that you can't have Jean Grey without having Phoenix. Because we do know that at some point, MCU is going to do the Phoenix storyline. So you got to have someone that can play the wholesome kind of, she could be seductive, but she's kind of, the good girl kind of character in Jean Grey, but then can drop it in a hat and be this badass, evil chick that's constantly conflicted with her, what she's doing and everything like that. And I went with someone that you and I love. We both know she can pull off red hair. And I think she'd be perfect again with Efron in this. And that is Mary Elizabeth Winstead. I can see her. We've seen her with red hair. She can do physical stuff because we've seen her in action already. And I think Suicide Squad wise, I don't think her as Huntress is really going to really stick further than what we've already seen. So I don't think we got to worry about her being in the DC stuff anymore. I think Mary Elizabeth Winstead would actually be a really great Jean Grey / Phoenix character. Who did you go with your Jean Grey? Because I knew this was another one you were having a hard time.
I love Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and I would have no problem seeing her if she cast in this role. However, I would not cast her in this role. But this was another one that was kind of difficult because we've seen a couple versions of her, especially the last with Sophie Turner, is the very definition of bland and lifeless. So anything's an improvement over Sophie Turner.
Famke was a good Jean Grey.
Unless it's January Jones. She was more bland and boring than Sophie Turner. But I wanted somebody that I figured Jean Grey, assuming they go, with the usual storyline, is going to be one of the faces of the X-Men. She and Cyclops are kind of the main couple, the center of the X-Men, if you will, besides Professor X, obviously. So I wanted somebody who obviously can act. They can do physical activity, but first and foremost, they should be act, maybe have a little bit of prestige to them. And so I actually went with a girl who needs to have, she's had Oscar nominations. She's done an action film here and there, but she's never had like a big blockbuster kind of film. And I really want her to. She was almost cast as Rey in the Star Wars The Force Awakens, but she lost out. And that is Saoirse Ronan. I would love to see Saoirse Ronan kind of play Jean Grey here, and I think it's going to work out perfectly.
She was on my list of 10, but I removed her because I'm like, I just don't.
Now, if they go to Phoenix storyline, I don't know if I see that, but I honestly, it's been done already twice in the movie. I don't know if they'll do Phoenix again.
They will at some point. They have to.
There's so many X-Men storylines, though. I don't know.
It's one of those things where, like with Saoirse Ronan, I think she's a fantastic actress, but I haven't really loved her in anything. Like I can tell she's a great actress, and it's like I just don't. I had her and I looked at her and I was like, her is Jean Grey. And I'm like, I don't want her as my Jean Grey. She's great. She's great. I haven't really loved her yet. But you got Wolverine, you got Jean. Why not have the biggest cuck in all of mutant history, Cyclops? I mean, he was played by the biggest cuck in Hollywood with James Marsden. I love James Marsden. I do. And I thought he was a solid Cyclops, but that dude got fucking screwed over so hardcore that they just killed his ass off screen. Like Marsden didn't deserve that. He really didn't. I for the longest time had this one pick locked in, but then when I decided that I was gonna stay with Emily Blunt and Krasinski, because this person was gonna be my Mr. Fantastic. He was. And then because I decided to stay with Krasinski and Blunt as Fantastic and Sue Storm, I was like, I want this guy so badly in this. Because I originally I had Jonathan Groff as my Cyclops. That's who I had. From Hamilton, Mindhunters, Glee, Frozen. But there was just one thing that just, I don't know, there was something that was bothering me. I was like, he looks the part, but I don't believe him as a Cyclops character. I want someone, like you said, I
just can't see him being physical. That's my problem with Jonathan Groff.
That was the thing too. It's like as it basically just standing there and running shit and quarterbacking, great. Him as fighting, that was the thing I didn't really see him in. I want someone who can do physicality. I want someone who I know is a great actor, who I've loved seeing in roles, but I want someone also who is going to use this as a benchmark moment for him. And also who I think could work well with Efron and Mary Elizabeth Winstead and that. We've seen him work side by side with Robert Pattinson in Tenet, and that's John David Washington, Mr. Denzel Jr. I think like I said, I had him as Mr. Fantastic, but I went Krasinski with it. I think he can be really good as Cyclops. He can have that stick up his ass if he wants to. And I think also he would have really good back and forth with Efron. And I just so badly wanted him in this that I was like, well, he's either Fantastic or he's Cyclops. I was like, well, then he's got to be Cyclops then. So that was who my Cyclops was. Who was yours?
Mine is actually somebody who you have in a different role. And this is where I decided to slot in Zac Efron. because he's kind of, the all-American white boy kind of thing. I could see him with Saoirse Ronan. He's definitely got the physicality. He definitely, has the look to him. He can play like the boss, like you said, kind of running things when he's heading up the team. Or if you can't afford him, you can bring in Dacre Montgomery. He'll work too because he's budget Zac Efron.
I actually did have Taron Egerton as a choice at one point too.
Runners up, I had Dylan O'Brien possibly, and I also considered Jack Rayner.
I don't hate Jack Rayner. He was my Robin. So naturally, we come down to our final two. There would be no X-Men.
No, we don't.
Yeah, you.
You have skipped one of my favorite characters, and that was Kitty Pryde.
We didn't do Kitty Pryde.
Right. You said the final two, didn't you?
No, we never had Kitty Pryde on the list.
Yeah, we did.
No,
I don't know why you didn't put it down.
I don't have anyone for Kitty Pryde because I've never had Kitty Pryde on the list.
All
right, Brian's got a bonus person because I did not do Kitty Pryde.
Well, actually, I have two bonus people because we had been talking and I just mentioned Kitty Pryde, and I said we should also do Colossus. And you said no, we won't do Colossus because he's in Deadpool.
Exactly, and because Deadpool's in the same universe, we weren't going to do Colossus.
Well, you weren't going to. I was going to.
Okay, but Brian, go ahead with Kitty Pryde and Colossus.
What led into Colossus is we were talking about Kitty Pryde, because I said who I want is Kitty Pryde, who I think would be perfect for it, just because she's what Rogue was in X-Men was supposed to be what Kitty Pryde is. She's supposed to be the younger girl that comes in the group, and she's kind of new to it. She's younger than everybody else. At one point, and then she eventually, gets together with Colossus, their boyfriend girlfriend for the longest time. But for my Kitty Pryde, because I gotta have her in here somewhere, is Zoe Deutsch. I love Zoe Deutsch. I think this is supposed to be perfect with. Although Zoe, honestly, I think could make a good Jean Grey as well. Because she got the red hair. She seems a little, I think, too young for Jean Grey.
That's why I didn't go with her on that.
So I put her at Kitty Pryde with my very close runner-up. If it didn't get Zoe, Natalie Dyer from Stranger Things. There's a theme going on tonight with a lot of Stranger Things people.
I'm just glad that for once, Stranger Things, it's the teenagers that are getting picked and not the kids.
Not the kids. Yeah, I don't want any of those.
It's the kids that are getting picked.
But Natalie Dyer, I think she has the exact right look and personality to play Shadowcat, Sprite, Ariel, Kitty Pryde. She's had so many names. And then as Colossus, if they cast somebody separate instead of using the Deadpool one, because Deadpool's kind of its own thing, I had to go with Alan Ritchson, who is in Jack Reacher now, because he's such physical beast to him. He's definitely got personality to him, and I just thought he's perfect for it. Now you can go on your final two.
I love Alan Ritchson. I mean, anyone who's ever seen Blue Mountain State, if you have not heard of Blue Mountain State, look up Thad Castle, Blue Mountain State. You will not be disappointed.
Everyone you've seen first, Blue Mountain State or Jack Reacher, you won't believe that the other one's the same guy. No,
absolutely. He also was Aquaman in Smallville for like one episode. So, and he was Raphael in the Michael Bay Turtles. Okay, so now, as I was going to say before I was rude, you can't have the X-Men. He's like, fuck you. You can't have the X-Men without Xavier and Magneto. Now, for me, once again, these two were also the hardest ones for me to pick because I didn't want to go young. But I also I just had a lot of choices. I just didn't know which one I wanted to pick. What's funny is that two of my two backups for Xavier, I also had as for Magneto. And then I ended up picking, whoever. I honestly had considered at one point doing the Breaking Bad and having Cranston as Xavier and Juan Carlos Esposito as Magneto, but then I was like, no. I was like, I would love that, but no. I had Ralph Fiennes in both roles. Didn't pick him. So naturally, I came down to these two choices. For Professor Xavier, I love this actor. I used him during the Batman fantasy casting. And the reason why I'm going with him is because I've seen him in a role not similar, but I saw him in another role of an action film. And I was like, I can see him being Xavier because I saw him in this movie. And that is from The Kingsman, Mark Strong. You have Mark Strong as Xavier also?
I have the same. I have some other ones I'll discuss, but he ended up being my final pick.
I mean, because he was I always want to say it's Lancelot. He wasn't Lancelot. Merlin. He was Merlin. I love Mark Strong so much, but he's always such a great villain. And in Kingsman, he showed that he could be a good guy. And the way he did that character, the way he molded Taron Egerton in the film and worked with Colin Firth, I see him. Plus, he looks great bald. And you got to have a bald.
That's the thing. I didn't want to just cast somebody because they were bald, but it just worked out that he's perfect for it. Yeah.
No, I literally got to the point where all these characters, I typed them in bald so I could see what they looked like bald. And I was like, why am I doing this? I'm picking Mark Strong. Plus, he wears, it's Mark Strong. I mean, how can you not? So obviously you picked that. So that means we matched at least twice on the show. Who were your backups that you were considering?
Well, Mark Strong's who I ended up with. I also considered Ralph Fiennes. I could totally see him pulling off the role. And the other one I considered, who obviously it'd be a little bit different version of him, and that is David Oyelowo, whatever.
From Selma?
What's that?
From Selma?
From Selma.
Okay.
He's from Selma. He was in Jack Reacher. He's in the movies. He's done a bunch of stuff, but I think he has the same kind of commanding presence to him. He's prestigious. He seems wise. I could see him like kind of directing, leading the team. So I think they wanted to go a little bit different way with it. They could go with him, but I definitely think Mark Strong is the correct pick. Now with Magneto, the problem with Magneto.
This was hard. Yeah. This is hard.
The problem with Magneto, and in fact, and kind of affected how I thought about Xavier as well, is they're supposed to be basically old friends, old colleagues. They just have different ideologies. And so they kind of think they have to be about the same. The problem is Magneto's main motivation and storyline comes from him being a Holocaust survivor. Now in the MCU,
that's like
it's like they can't just say, oh, that's not a part of him anymore, because it's such a major part of the character. But then he'd be way too old now to have him be a Holocaust survivor. So unless they are going to introduce something like, because of his mutant powers, he ages more slowly or something like that. But then you have to have Charles Xavier has the same thing, because so it becomes a whole thing that's for people smarter than me to figure out when they write the movies. But anyway, so I decided that because they're going to have to probably say that he doesn't age as fast or something to make him still have been able to be a part of the Holocaust, I thought we can go younger with him, kind of like the Fassbender version. But this is where I ended up deciding to use Nikolai Coster-Waldau, because I thought that he can be somebody who, like in Game of Thrones, he was a hero, but he was a villain at the same time. He was somebody who, his ideologies didn't match with certain people, but yet he allied with people at certain times. He was somebody who you could like and root for, but at other times, depending on what he was doing in a given moment, you could also hate that character as part of being Jaime Lannister. And I just think he has kind of that commanding presence to him in his voice. I think he can work out well.
Yeah, I was like I said, that was a big problem for you and me both. So I was like, how are they going to do the Holocaust thing? Because I mean, like he'd be like 80 something.
He'd be like 90. Yeah, I think I saw somebody do the math. If he was like 10 years old in the Holocaust, he'd have to be like 91 to 96 now.
Yeah, we can't do that. So they're gonna have to figure out some way for this to work. Now, I at one point had Christoph Waltz as well, but I was like, no, that's a little on the nose that a Holocaust survivor is also the Jew hunter from Inglourious Basterds. I can't do that. And like I said, I had Giancarlo Esposito and I had Cranston, but they didn't like match the same age as Mark Strong. And I had
Michael Shannon here too, as well, by the way.
Yeah,
he's a little too over the top for Magneto.
And I had Fiennes, but I was like, no, he was Voldemort. He can't be Magneto and Voldemort. So I went with someone who is also, like Mark Strong, was one of my best villains, one of my favorite villain characters or actors. He is obviously going to be a villain in this, but I have seen him be good before, but he is way better as a villain. You love him as a villain as well, and that is Jason Isaacs. Jason Isaacs, everyone knows him as Lucius Malfoy from Harry Potter. We love him from The Patriot, where he was the best villain in that movie. He's the same age as Mark Strong, so that works. So they can be, right around the same age, friends. I think they're both 57. He just knows how to be a villain. He's great. Like, if you had told me, well, obviously I never read the books. If you had told me in Harry Potter that Lucius Malfoy ended up being the fucking villain and not Voldemort, I'd be like, all right, that's fine, because Jason Isaacs is playing Lucius Malfoy. I'm totally okay with that. Giving him this big role, because that's the other thing too, is Jason Isaacs, he's a great villain, but he's never been like the villain. Like he was the villain in The Patriot, but he was never like this iconic villain. And I think giving him Magneto, and then you have someone so great as Mark Strong working together, I would love that pairing as Magneto and Professor Xavier. You gave me a little like a head tilt when I said Isaacs. Did you not agree with something or what?
Oh no, I've never been as big a fan of The Patriot as you, but he was definitely a great villain in that. Yeah.
I mean, come on, he killed Heath Ledger. Spoiler alert. But yes, that is our cast. Quick little run through again. Who are your total picks again? Just because we went through so many, like run through real fast.
Okay, for Mr. Fantastic and Sue Storm, assuming Krasinski and Blunt to do it, I had Sam Claflin, Lily James, with Johnny Storm, Anthony Ramos, O'Shea Jackson Jr. is the Thing, Doctor Doom, Michael Shannon, or if they go with young route, Jonathan Rhys Meyers. For the X-Men, I had for Professor X, Mark Strong, Magneto, Nikolai Coster-Waldau, Wolverine, Alden Ehrenreich, Cyclops, Zac Efron, or Budget Zac Efron, Jean Grey, Saoirse Ronan, Colossus, Alan Ritchson, Kitty Pryde, Zoe Deutsch, or Natalie Dyer, Storm, Sonequa Martin Green, Nightcrawler, Riz Ahmed, Iceman, Mason Gooding, Beast, Toby Kettle, Gambit, Boyd Holbrook, Rogue, Mackenzie Davis, Psylocke, British Kate Beckinsale, but more likely the Asian, Jessica Henwick, Sabretooth, Jason Momoa, Mystique, Natalie Dormer, and Angel, Alex Pettifer.
Yeah, and I am in no particular order. I had Zac Efron as Wolverine. I had John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic, Emily Blunt as Sue Storm, Dylan O'Brien as Human Torch, Terry Crews as The Thing, John David Washington as Cyclops, Kiki Lane as Storm, Daveed Diggs as Gambit, Joe Kiri as Iceman, Raul Cooley as Beast, Pablo Schreiber as Sabretooth, Karen Fukara, however you say the last name.
By the way, I realized she was also Katana in Suicide Squad. So she
was. She was Katana. She had the blade. Perfectly fits for Psylocke as well. Robert Sheehan for Nightcrawler, Natalie Dormer for Mystique, Dacre Montgomery as Angel, Coleman Domingo as Dr. Doom, Elizabeth Gillies as Rogue, Mark Strong as Professor X, Jason Isaacs as Magneto, and Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Jean Grey. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We hope you guys liked our picks. What were your picks? Who do you want to cast in the MCU for the X-Men and the Fantastic Four? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like, share, and subscribe button to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos pop up on the Movie Crusaders. And of course, like to follow us on all those social media outlets you see below. Obviously, coming up next, we have the non-spoiler review for Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness. And also, Brian and I will be back on for a spoiler review of Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Next week, Firestarter and Senior Year come out, so we may have reviews for those. We may not. I don't know.
A little bit of a week, yeah.
Yeah, if I watch them, I'll catch them. But we'll also be back for the is that the Movie Crusaders Chat About show, or is that the Actor, Director Showcase?
We had the chat about movie marketing.
Oh yeah. So it's Movie Crusaders Chat About, and we're going to be talking about movie marketing. How the movies are marketed, how the trailers, affect films and all that kind of stuff. So that's our next show. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. We love doing these episodes, even though they are a headache because we're going to start just using a lot of the same people over and over and over again. But Brian, anything else before we go?
No, these are the conversations we have on a daily basis. So it's like, why not film them? And
absolutely. So until next time, I'm Sean Wascrew. That's Brian Michaels. We are the Movie Crusaders. Until next time, in case we don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Movie Crusaders.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.